Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're looking at IREN and what they do, what the business does. They are a data center play. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. No, I'm just kidding, but we're going to dive into it a little bit more specifically than that. They are a data center company, but let's break that down, see what that means. Let's see how many data centers they have, and we'll look at the bull case versus the bear case at the end. So on this channel, I break down companies into what they actually do so that you know the business behind the ticker you're buying. If that's interesting to you, please subscribe. Leave a comment on what company you would like me to look at next. So let's get into this now. IREN started as a Bitcoin miner, but they're trying to reshape the business into an AI infrastructure company. So we're in the middle of this AI build out right now, and we know GPUs are a scarce resource, but there's a lot more components that go into it to make those GPUs usable. For example, the networking inside the racks, the software running on the GPUs to orchestrate everything, as well as the energy, just powering these data centers. These are all different resources that need to be properly managed to make a usable, AI data center solution. So let's look at IREN. So IREN sells high performance computing directly through two layers, and that's the physical data center infrastructure and the access to NVIDIA GPUs. So customers of IREN can rent these GPUs and use the IREN Cloud for AI training, fine-tuning new models, inference, deep learning, running simulations for research, recommender systems, or any other heavy workload. IREN's also in the middle of building out large campuses that could eventually support customer-owned hardware, as well as build-to-suit solutions to meet the needs of specific customers, rather than offering the kind of generic GPU rentals. So as of right now, IREN is really good at finding power energy. They are building the data centers, they install the GPUs and manage that, and then they connect everything up with high-speed networking and sell that solution to the customers. So diving into their first product, it is the AI Cloud, and this is essentially renting NVIDIA GPUs. So they do have a partnership with NVIDIA, so these are the GPUs they provide. They don't have any AMD or Intel. I don't know if anyone does, but instead of the customer buying and operating these GPU stacks themselves, they are able to just rent them from IREN. So if you look at the website here, we can see they have a lot of different models of NVIDIA GPUs, and I'm sure they come with different price points. IREN is targeting the bigger, hyperscale businesses. So this isn't like if you or me wanted to go rent GPUs, this wouldn't really be the company, which is why obviously you can't see any prices on this. This isn't like DigitalOcean where you can go, rent a small GPU cluster for a little bit per month. But we can see they have the H100, 200, all the way up to the Grace Blackwell GB300s. So the clusters use NVIDIA reference architecture and high bandwidth InfiniBand networking, and that allows for distributed training. So you can do a little bit of work on multiple GPUs. So like I said, IREN started as a Bitcoin miner. And if we look at it from this perspective, GPU rental can produce much more revenue than mining Bitcoin. But GPUs are expensive. They can depreciate fairly quickly because there's always new, better models coming out. And they need to be, they need to stay being heavily utilized. Otherwise, you just have chips sitting in this data center and not generating revenue. So next, I wanted to look at their actual data centers. So if we look here, they have 6 locations in North America. I will tell you right now, these are not all currently up and running. Some are still being built out. So one of the differences between IREN and some of the other data center companies is IREN owns the building and the land that these data centers are running on. So they're able to lower their long-term costs, because they don't have recurring rent that they have to be paying to a landlord. They're able to redesign, the facilities exactly the way they need them without, again, talking to a landlord. And also the power rights that come into these buildings. IREN gets to own those because they own the land in the buildings. Obviously, there's a downside, which is the enormous construction cost that they have to pay up front. It carries the risk of delays. So maybe a customer's trying to buy compute from IREN, but if the construction gets delayed, they're not going to be able to capitalize on that customer fast and as fast as they'd be able to if they could just rent an established building. So let's just dive into these. I want to look at, they have 3 data centers here in British Columbia, Canada. And these are the 3 data centers that they started with. So they're Bitcoin miners. And these are all using renewable energy, IREN claims. I did a little bit of research and found out that means, it either comes from renewable sources or IREN buys the renewable credits and kind of pays a tax on the non-renewable energy that they're using. Real quick, the megawatt capacity, that's a good way to measure data centers because it measures the power that the entire data center can use. I did some quick math, and very roughly for 1 megawatt, it can run between like 65 to 400 GPUs, which is a big range, but it's going to be closer to like 100 GPUs for the AI clusters. So they have these 3 in Canada currently going. They're building out some other ones, 1 in Oklahoma, 1 in Texas. So real quick, let's look at the Childress data center. And this one is up and running. This is kind of their most important site for the near-term AI story. Because IREN's converting capacity from Bitcoin mining into the higher value GPU workloads. And we can see this is a 750 megawatt data center on 576 acres. Yeah, this is in West Texas, and it pulls from the ERCOT power grid. And they do have on-site substations owned by IREN. So again, they kind of own the infrastructure, the substations, the energy rights. That's, again, one of their big advantages is the energy that they have procured. I'm looking at the Canada data centers real quick. The Prince George Center is being converted to AI Cloud. It already contains GPU infrastructure, and IREN has reported about 500 million of contracted ARR associated with this data center. The other 2 are remaining Bitcoin mining for now. They would still need to convert those to be able to support the AI workloads. And we'll get to it a little bit later, but the Bitcoin mining is actually what's funding the build out of these other data centers that will be AI focused. So if we look at the Oklahoma site, it's estimated to be 1,600 megawatts. I think that's 1.6 gigawatts, if I did that math correctly. They have already secured this power. And I was a little confused on what that meant, but essentially they have, gotten approval from the grid, done studies to show that the grid can support this, and then, signed whatever contracts needed. So once this data center is built, the power will be there. So it's kind of like a step towards the end product. They don't have 1,600 megawatts currently running in Oklahoma, but once they build the building, get everything set up, they have that power available. Another data center they're building in Sweetwater will be 200 megawatts. 2,000, so 2 gigawatts. And again, this is the same energy connection as the other Texas data center. So it's to the ERCOT grid. And just interestingly, I was curious what this grid uses to generate the power. And it looks like they use a mix of solar, wind, natural gas, coal, and nuclear. So that's kind of interesting. So that's kind of where they still claim it's renewable energy, but they're buying those credits to offset the coal energy. So those are the data centers. Let's look at a contract real quick. This is a deal that IREN made with Microsoft. This was in November of 2025. And this is kind of their anchor deal that is driving the company forward towards the AI cloud computing side of the business. And Microsoft agreed to pay up to 9.7 billion over time. So they got 20% of that up front, and then they'll be paying close to 2 billion per year. And that's assuming on-time delivery from IREN. So it's still performance-based. IREN could, drop the ball and not get this money. But if they're able to execute and get everything built and up and running in time, they will have that consistent revenue coming in directly from Microsoft. This was kind of a turning point for IREN because it gave them that hyperscaler customer that kind of confirmed their place in this data center space. Now, a risk is right now Microsoft is like their main customer. So, if this deal falls through, that would have pretty catastrophic effects on IREN. So ideally, we would see them expand and grow their clientele. Another deal that they made recently, this was in May 2026, they secured a contract with NVIDIA, and this is a 5-year, approximately $3.5 billion deal. And what they're doing is they're supplying managed AI cloud services directly to NVIDIA to help with internal AI and research workloads. So they're not only providing the, bare metal GPUs, which ironically are NVIDIA GPUs anyways, but they're, adding in that service layer, making sure they are up and running and able to perform what needs to be ran on the GPUs. NVIDIA did receive a 5-year right to purchase up to 30 million shares of IREN at $70 per share, and that's subject to conditions. So NVIDIA can choose to do that or not. IREN is currently trading at right about $60. So they still have that $10 difference there before NVIDIA would even consider buying shares at that agreed price. Now, if we go overseas to Australia, IREN announced the first data center in Australia, and it'll be an 800 megawatt data center. They're looking at energizing it beginning in 2028. And they're going to be running submarine fiber connections towards, major Asia Pacific demand centers. So targeting, more of that side of the world's AI needs rather than the North America data centers. And this does expand them past, North America, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but they do have some presence in Europe. So this kind of hits on establishing them in North America, Europe, and Australia now. This gives them access to, more global clientele, but IREN, they have to manage that too, so they'll have teams in 3 continents now. In June of 2026, this was just like a week ago, IREN acquired Nostrum Group, which is a data center infrastructure company in Europe. So now they do have a presence in Europe, and that adds additionally about close to 500 megawatts of secured power in Spain. So again, they're expanding around the world, trying to build up their portfolio of power and being able to service clients all around the globe. I did want to touch on the Bitcoin mining real quick. So in Q3 of 2026, IREN generated $144 million of revenue. So 111 million of that came from Bitcoin mining. So only about 33 million came from this AI cloud side of the business. The idea is that will flip drastically and the AI side will, scale significantly. But for now, Bitcoin is still driving a lot of the revenue. And with the, price of Bitcoin coming down pretty drastically, we're at 63,000. That is a risk to IREN. So although they're moving away from it, they still are heavily integrated into the Bitcoin mining side of the business. And the last part I wanted to touch on is, a data center full of GPUs is not automatically an AI cloud platform. You need to have software layers on top of that to get everything to run correctly and talk across different, GPUs in the cluster and all that. So to solve that problem, IREN acquired this company Mirantis. We can see here at the top, they entered into an agreement to be acquired by IREN. And this acquisition is going to strengthen how compute is deployed, managed, and operated for customers. So this, helps IREN move a step above renting out the bare metal GPUs and actually offering that service layer on top of it. The risk here is IREN will need to become experts in this and be able to manage this and service this to meet the customer demands. If they drop the ball on this layer of it, that then hurts the entire downstream GPU rentals and could sour the relationship with the customer. Okay, let's look at the bull case. IREN's biggest advantage right now is the combination of power, land, and grid connections they have, as well as, they're able to construct these data centers and they have access to NVIDIA's systems very directly with that partnership from NVIDIA. Having that Microsoft contract and the NVIDIA contract, it provides a major customer validation, and they have that contracted demand that they can, show to investors. Owning their infrastructure, taking that risk, paying for everything up front, but then owning it, that could create better long-term economics rather than relying on third parties for, renting or energy. Having the existing Bitcoin mining sites allows IREN to have that cash flow to be able to put that into the places that they think need funding fastest to build out the rest of these data centers. So a data center company starting from scratch, obviously doesn't have those established sites mining Bitcoin. And if the price of Bitcoin, goes up soon, that will drastically increase their revenue as well. So, bear case, the expansion that they're trying to do requires billions of dollars and leaves little room for construction delays, hardware shortages, cost overruns, or weak utilization. Their customer concentration is high. Like I said, it's just Microsoft pretty much, some NVIDIA. I looked it up. I think they also have AI as a customer, but they're going to need to make a lot of deals and, fill up these data centers, get them used up to be successful. The next bear case is kind of, it's for all the data centers, but if these GPU systems can become obsolete quickly due to faster advancements in other areas or, better GPUs, that's just a risk of their inventory becoming obsolete. We haven't really seen that much. We've seen every time a better GPU comes out, the older ones still are maxed out on demand. So this could become an issue eventually, but we're not seeing it right now. One risk is the company's kind of juggling a lot of different things right now. So they're managing the transition from mining to AI hardware. They're managing the global development projects since they're, in North America, Europe, and Australia now. They're acquiring companies. They're going to, taking out debt and potentially diluting equity. There's just a lot of different moving parts that they're managing. So I think the risk is that investors would price in the full AI pipeline before it's proved that IREN can deliver on that pipeline. It's a lot of good looking, news. They have the energy. They are building these data centers. Now we just need to see them convert that into revenue coming in from clients. So thanks for watching. Definitely a company to be watching out for. Very interesting. And if you enjoyed this, consider subscribing, and please tell me what company to talk about next in the comments, because if not, I'm probably just going to pick my favorite company, and you can find out what that is next time. So bye-bye.